Hey friends, welcome to Rad Stream, the Rad Stream, Rapid App Development. Um, so I think I want to take a look at a few different cases where people have shifted their career paths for a career in no code, if you can call it that, right? I do think it is a viable career path at this point. It's definitely becoming more and more prevalent. People are, you know, uh, finding jobs as a full-time Bubble developer. Specifically, I think Bubble, right? Maybe Xano too. I don't know if the demand is there to be like a full-time Xano expert or Xano consultant. Maybe I'm wrong. There's definitely, I'm sure some people will disagree with me on that, but I think specifically, probably the largest opportunities or the quantity of opportunities are definitely in if you know Bubble, if you know how to work in Bubble. So I have my own story on how I fell into it. I think that I actually made a lot of mistakes um, as I chose to just, quit my job to work in Bubble. It was really probably some poor decisions on my part, but, it still led me to where I am today, so I don't really regret it. But if I could go back, I probably would have done things differently. So I want to talk about that, but I do want to take a look at these four people, right? So No Code Life, which is a newsletter that you can subscribe to, is documenting people who have transitioned from a career, kind of an unrelated or, tangential at best, I would say, uh, career path into doing something related to no code full time. So let's just go. I guess let's check out all of these actually in no particular order. I know Kelly. I don't know anyone else here. I know Vency from Twitter, but I don't. I don't. I've never. I don't think I've ever actually spoken to her directly. Let's start with her. All right. So you can see that, like, I think the interesting thing here to remember is that, like, these people have very little to no, or have little to no technical background, and they probably put, like me, 5-10 years into a specific career path, and then completely changed directions, like completely, because they felt so strongly about the future of this space, and were willing to bet their career on it. Like, it's pretty wild if you think about it that way. Um, so from top lawyer to full-time no-code operator and educator, Vency Krishna left her career as a top lawyer to become a no-code operator and educator soon after discovering no-code on Twitter in late 2020. Late 2020. Since then, she's launched several projects, hosted events, and spoken at the United Nations and Google. Damn, Vency. I'll drop Vency's. I'll drop this into the chat too in case anybody's interested. But Vency's got a pretty big Twitter following too. Twitter. Vency. I think I'm connected with her or following her. Yeah, this is her. Yeah, it's a pretty big. It's a pretty big following. All right. Briefly introduce yourself. I'm Vency, a no-code operator and educator currently in India. I studied one of the toughest undergrad courses in the world, graduated in the top percentile at the country's premier law school, and ran 2 successful startups. Damn, Vency, you are an overachiever. For 8 years, I learned and used tools such as WordPress, Zapier, without knowing the term no code. See, that's another interesting path too. It's like people who aren't even really aware that this is a space or that people call themselves like no coders. They just find tools that are useful to them in their everyday life or something that they may be going through at their job. And they're like, oh, wow, there's like a whole group of people that are dedicated to this. You honestly wouldn't know that. It's not obvious unless you're like on Twitter, and like you're already connected to these people. Ah, oh, damn it, my screen froze. All right, hang on. I know this is weird. Hang on. I'm gonna unplug. see. Hold on. I'm back. We started the Pet Strike Cam. Yep. Let me pull my screens back to where they were. Okay. Stop sharing. All right. What was I saying? That yeah, but they've just like found a tool that works for them, and then kind of rediscover that after the fact, and like there's just a they realize like there's a whole community of people like just super passionate about learning these tools. 8 years. So 8 years. Once I found the community in 2021, I'd love to know how she found it. I dove right in and pivoted my career. All right. Describe your career journey prior to discovering no code. I found the no code community through Twitter in late 2020. There you go. The answer to my question. Late 2020, and it was tiny back then. I challenged myself to learn something new in the no code space every single day. And by the end of month 1, I had a fully functional app with a team and users. I launched a few projects for fun and for limited purposes before finally applying for a full-time role at OnDeck, leading to candidate ops for half the program. So late 2020, that's actually when I got on Twitter as well. I think it was 2020. Let me see. 20, I joined in 2020, and I didn't start actually tweeting until like December of 2020. So say around the same time that we found the community. I found it because of Eric Israni. He told me that there was a pretty active community on Bubble community on Twitter, and that's why I got on, because I wanted to fill up the boot camps. I was starting to do boot camps for the first time. And that's why I got on Twitter, and then I realized like, oh yeah, there's more people here that are kind of like me, like trying to figure this stuff out. So it was a good spot. So yeah, Vency and I found Twitter, I guess, or found the community on Twitter around about the same time. How did you discover no code? As a non-technical person, no code was always very promising. My aha moment was when I learned the power of using Google Sheets to create full-fledged apps. I wonder how she did that. I started with Bubble, so I knew what was possible with no-code tools, but tools like Glide were game-changing in their speed. Describe how no-code has changed your career trajectory. 2 years ago, I was a lawyer. Today, I have successfully broken into tech, worked with Silicon Valley's fastest-growing startups, spoke at the United Nations, Google, and even a conference with Trevor Noah. Damn. This was possible because of the projects I was able to build with no code. So like totally different career trajectory. I'm sure she would have been a very successful lawyer, or was a successful lawyer. And she turned. It just seems like the timeline for her transition was so fast, right? 2 years. In 2 years, she built these projects and speaking at all these places. Quite impressive. What were the biggest challenges to learning no code and making the career change? When I started, there was no structured educational program, so I learned through building. Yep, me too. But this helped me become a better educator and mentor. While this was an ideal learning method for me, it might be challenging for someone who is more comfortable with courses and structured exercises. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember, is that, like everyone's learning style is different, and you're going to pick this stuff up at a different pace than other people. And it's really hard not to be like embarrassed about that. I think a lot of people that came through the boot camps were like kind of embarrassed to show what they were building, because they would take a look at someone else's and they'd be like, oh, by comparison, mine looks like shit. But, again, it's just like you're coming with a different background. Your learning style might be a little bit different. There's just so many variables into what kind of progress you make with this stuff. So it's nothing to be embarrassed about. What were your biggest lessons learned? The world is changing rapidly, so keep learning each day. What's your plan for the next 5 years? I want to become the best no-code teacher in the world. So I guess she's focusing mostly on the education component now. What advice would you give to others hoping to change careers in the way they do? Keep building, keep shipping, keep showing up, take the help of the community, and find a mentor who can guide you. All right, so that's Vency's story. Let's take a look at I feel like that's a kind of an uncommon story, like where she just that she not that she came in, like the background is, she came with a domain experience in a specific area. But I think that's unusual in how much progress she made in such a short amount of time. Speaking at Google, speaking at launched several projects. I don't know that everyone follows that path and moves that rapidly. So I only point that out because like it is possible, but I don't know if everyone's going to see that progress in that short amount of time. 2 years is not a long time, in my opinion, to be in a career path, starting a new career. If you're like 2 years into your development, like think about it, somebody who codes, a software engineer, they're 2 years into their development career. They're junior, right? Like you're a junior dev in 2 years. For some reason, like in Bubble, if you've been working in Bubble for 2 years, you're like looked at like an expert, right? Just because the length, the time that people have, like the hours that people have put in, is just, again, it's so new, right? Like it's only become like a career path to follow in the last like 2 or 3 years. All right, so let's take a look at Andrew Vernon. I feel like this is the founder of No Code Life. I don't know if I'm making that up. How a photographer created 2 additional streams of income streams and a new career with no code. All right, Andrew Vernon. So coming from a photography background, right? Got lawyer and then photography background. Andrew Vernon was working with his family's school photography business when he realized he could use the no-code tool Bubble to streamline their workflows. In doing so, he not only created a piece of software he is now selling to other photography companies. Cool. Love to hear that. He's also discovering a love for no-code and changed careers to become a full-time Bubble developer. Nice. All right, let's check out Andrew's stuff. All right, my name is Andrew Vernon. I'm a Bubble developer at Bubble. So he's employed by Bubble. Whoa. I've been on the team for a little over a year and a half now and love what I do. My wife and I and our 3 kids currently live in Greensville, South Carolina, and been building on Bubble for around 3 to 4 years now. All right, describe your career journey prior to discovering no code. My family owns a school photography business, and prior to a career in no code, basically all of my working life was spent in the family business. The plan was to work alongside my parents and eventually take over the business. Honestly, I love what I did for a living and was there for around 12 years. My favorite part of the job was all the tech. School photography is an interesting mix of photography, automation, and data, and I had free reign to build any automations, apps, or databases I felt would support the business. All right, so he did kind of have he had a business need, and I think this is something that's important that like people don't tell you when you're starting to approach like tech in any form, right? I think it's very difficult to just like, I'm gonna learn, right? I'm just gonna learn, like, and get to this, like expert level or junior level, and then I'll get a job. To me, that's a very difficult approach because I don't know. Maybe if I have a career path in mind, like a job that I'm after, maybe that's a good enough goal. But I have a hard time staying motivated when I don't have a real reason to be learning something, especially something as time intensive and effort that's required as like learning a skill, like a hard skill like this. So I think that's like, something that like, how do you stay motivated in learning this stuff when it gets tough is kind of like you have a real like life need to learn it. I think that helps. I think that definitely helps. Which it sounds like Andrew did here. This got me hooked initially on Airtable, WordPress, and Zapier, but I quickly found my way to Bubble. Seems like everybody kind of follows that path. Start with like a Zapier or an Airtable or like a website builder, and then you eventually find your way to the magic land of Bubble. While looking for a CRM that would fit our niche industry. How did you discover no code? I've always been into automations and trying to build things that would enable me or my family's business to work more efficiently, but my first aha moment was probably a base I built in Airtable. At the time, we were photographing hundreds of high school seniors a year across 7 to 8 high schools, and I was running that side of the business. We needed to be able to tell each school who hadn't had their photos taken yet and who had selected the photos that would appear in the yearbook. Internally, we also needed a way to track everyone we photographed, track what photos needed to be retouched, and then what had been delivered. I built the whole thing in Airtable and connected it to our website through Zapier. Cool. It's probably almost 5 years old now. My family still uses it to this day. That was my first glimpse in how it's possible to build functioning systems without having to write code, and I was hooked. So a real use case into something that like who in the photography industry would know to do this? You know what I mean? Like there's just like there's so many fields like this that could benefit from these automations and just like taking over some of that tedious work that they probably just don't even consider technology as a solution to, because they're like, oh well, I gotta then like find a developer and hire them and like spend a lot of money and it's gonna take forever. I'm not gonna get what I want. But like it's not true. You know, like there's so many different paths to go down to help with this stuff, and there's so many different industries that could benefit from this. For me, no code has been such a surprising career change. I never imagined I would be working in the tech industry, and certainly never dreamed I'd be at a funded startup like Bubble. My goal was to take over the family business and keep doing what I was doing. Originally, Bubble specifically was the best platform I found to build the exact CRM we needed. I learned enough at Bubble to get an MVP working specifically for our team, and we put it to work pretty quickly. Word spread, and soon I had some friends in the industry also using it. To me, it was mind-blowing that I could create a functional app without code that was dependable enough for others to use. It was a total game changer. But I still didn't imagine it would result in a career change. But as my interest was growing in Bubble and no code in general, COVID hit, and they hit school photography industry hard with a 2-day window. Yeah, it must have sucked. COVID must have fucked all that up. Like schools were closed for that time, and if like your family business is relying on school photography, wow, that's a rough hit. That's a rough hit. Within 2-day window, every single one of our remaining photo shoots for the school were canceled. The school's closed, and like everyone else, we had no idea when things might return to normal. Damn, that sucks, Andrew. We weren't sure if the business would survive or how things would work out, so I took a part-time coaching role at Coaching No Code Apps. Cool. So for those of you that don't know Gabby, Gabby started Coaching No Code Apps. Gabby was very early to the Bubble no code space, and she taught a lot of us how to work in Bubble when there really was like her and maybe 2 other people that were making Bubble content in like 2017. There weren't that many. At least they weren't easy to find. Now there's quite a bit more tutorials and ways to find your, get unstuck. Gabby is a freaking rock star, and I learned a ton about a variety of use cases, database structure, efficiency, and more. Their program is phenomenal and worth checking out if you're looking to learn Bubble quickly and get a powerful MVP off the ground. I was at CNCA, Coaching No Code Apps, for about 6 months before ultimately hearing about a remote role at Bubble and deciding to leave my family's business to pursue it. Wow. All right, you currently have 2 micro SaaS, software as a service products built within Bubble. Can you tell us more about them? Shoot Assistant is a CRM project management app, but specifically for volume photographers. I built it after trying most of the photography CRMs and market and keeping a detailed list of what I liked, didn't like about each one. The biggest problem was that most were built for wedding or portrait photography, which is quite different from school portraits. Most school photographers I've come across are using separate tools for the various things that Shoot Assist does. Shoot Assist, I assume, is the app. Oh yeah, it is the app built on Bubble. Google Sheets for client info, manual emailing for photo shoot communications, and a separate for employee scheduling. Google Calendar for actually photo shoot scheduling, and then a task app of some kind. The biggest problem that most photographers haven't integrated those tools, so their process is to copy paste photo shoot info from one tool to the other and keep everything, which is labor intensive. Yeah, okay, I can see why that's a pain in the ass, because and you're also probably degrading the quality of the photo if you're like pushing it through a bunch of different tools, downloading it as a JPEG, uploading it because this tool needs a what's the other one? JPEG. I can't think of the other file now. God damn it. Whatever. Different photo files. I have to talk to Mashari about that, because he's looking to build something like this in Bubble. I probably need to connect him with Andrew here. All right. Or they have to learn one of the existing photography CRMs well enough to adapt it to halfway to meet some of their school photography needs. But as Shoot Assist pulls all this info into one app, your client info, all of your photo shoots, etc., into one database. Because it knows your client and job data, it offers employee scheduling where the info is up to date and accurate. It can also automate all of the pre and post photo shoot communications using email templates that the photographer writes using merge tags so that the emails still feel personal, detailed, and accurate. And photographers can set up a workflow templates for each job type so that every time they do a job that Shoot Assist knows what tasks need to get done and when it will help make sure it falls through the cracks. All right, so cool. This is built on Bubble. Check this out. This is the front end, I imagine, to his Airtable base, or maybe he's doing everything in Bubble now. I don't know. But looks pretty sweet. Looks pretty professional. Code return. Let's see. Do I want to read this part? Code return. Well, I think I'll skip this. This is probably the other SaaS that he has running. But I'm more interested in see what the back to the career stuff here. So what were the biggest challenges to learning no code and making the career change? Probably the biggest challenge was time. Especially during this first 6 months I was at coaching no code apps. I would work during the day at my family's business, spend dinner and bedtime with my wife and kids, and then work from around 7 to midnight every night coaching Bubble. Wow, that's a long day, dude. Most of my learning and building in Bubble, at least up until my Bubble developer role, happened like that outside of business hours and after my kids went to bed. Aside from that, the biggest challenge has been all the other things that go hand in hand with learning no code and building an app. Like, of course, how to avoid scope creep, how to talk to users, how to price your app, how to market your app, how to focus on the things that matter most. Building an app in Bubble doesn't require just learning Bubble, but typically also requires a lot of learning in those areas as well. Honestly, I'm still learning. Yeah, we all are. We all are. I think the build is probably, the easier part of those other things that you're describing here: finding users, pricing yourself, avoiding scope creep, whether that's internal or with another client. It's very those are skills. Those are like the soft skills that come with this type of work, right? The soft skills that come with the hard skills required. But if you don't have the soft skills down, your hard skills are going to be strained. You're going to strain yourself. You're going to strain your brain. You're going to be stressed out if you don't have those soft skills mastered. It's the biggest lessons learned here. It's pretty obvious, but the biggest lesson was that it's really is possible to build a fully functional and powerful app without code. It still blows my mind. It's super cool to solve a problem and have the solution be good enough that people across the country are willing to pay you for it. Aside from that, my personal experience has taught me that you're uniquely equipped to solve problems and have experience personally. That's a great point. Like, who can understand the problem better than you? Especially if you're building a solution for yourself. Like, who's going to understand that problem better? You know how difficult that would be to explain to a developer to build? Very difficult. Extremely difficult. You know it. You know your own problem. There are many photography CRMs, but none specifically built for school photography, which is much different and much more common types of photography like wedding and portrait. I've gotten pretty decent at Bubble over the years, but Shoot Assist has grown because of how it's solving the problem, not because of how well I know Bubble. I love you, Andrew. I love you for saying this. Yes, it is not enough to just be good at Bubble. It's like you have to build something useful too. That's a competitive advantage that more founders and solopreneurs should lean into. Yes, very true. All right, what's your plan for the next 5 years? Honestly, I love what I'm doing. I believe very deeply in Bubble's mission and have personally experienced the way Bubble can be a game changer for someone who's willing to learn it and leverage it to build their idea. From where I'm standing, I can't imagine not being a part of helping to further assist that mission in one way or another in the next 5 years. But who knows? 5 years ago, I would have said I would be running a school photography business. It's true. You never know. What advice would you give to others hoping to change careers in the way that you did? Incremental steps can lead to big changes. Damn, I feel like I've said that. I think because I have an article like this coming out too. They said he was going to post it like maybe in January, but I feel like I said the same thing. I generally never had some master plan to join the team at Bubble or break into the tech industry. For me, I wanted to build a solution for my family's business that led to an interest in no code and Bubble, which led to a side hustle product and a more interest in bubbles. See, you never know which way this stuff is going to take you. I feel like there's, even if you're just learning this on the side, like, I kind of pointed out before that I think you need to have like a goal in mind, not a goal, but like what is it that, it's easier to learn this if you have a reason to learn it. I think that's what I was trying to say. But doing this on the side also, it's one of the things I would have done differently. I wouldn't have quit my job to just learn to go all in on this. I would have kind of like learned this on the side and actually found a path, to earning money before I just like jumped ship. Yeah. So like the like, yeah, I didn't like it doesn't usually, it's not usually like a weird thing like I did. I think this method is much more common. It's kind of like gradual, and there's a reason that, it just evolved from genuine interest in building in Bubble. At each step, I just kept pursuing the thing that I enjoyed most. Even after joining Bubble, I've continued to pursue the things I enjoyed, and most of have been blessed to have worked on multiple teams and be given the opportunity to now pursue a role at Bubble. Crazy, all from the small, consistent step toward the things I was enjoying. Nice, man, nice. Follow Andrew. Let's follow Andrew. I am following him already. All right, I'm going to drop that in the chat in case anybody wants to follow Andrew. So is he the founder of No Code Life? No, I don't think so. I think I made that up. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look at Kelly. We all know Kelly. All right, Kelly, the opportunities I've had since I found Bubble are head spinning. From nonprofit operations director to full-time bubble maker and digital nomad. Kelly Claw. Yeah, Kelly is all over the world. Kelly is just like in a different country every time that I speak to her or hear from her. Kelly Claus has a successful career in operations roles at nonprofits when she decided to leave her job and travel full-time. After a few years trying to make a living as a web designer, she stumbled across Notion and subsequently Bubble. Again, a very familiar path at this point. She's full-time Bubble developer and designer and digital nomad. All right. I'm Kelly, first-time Bubbler, developer and designer. I came across Bubble from a career in branding and web design. Yeah, so Kelly comes from a world of like design, and it shows in the work that she does, the UX UIs that she produces. It's very clear that she has a background in design, which I think a lot of us don't. Yeah, it definitely shows. These days, I'm on the team at Swapstack, a marketplace built on Bubble, and I'm launching Wrote, a tool for grant writers also built on Bubble. I'm from the US, but I've been traveling for a long time, so sort of based nowhere, writing this from Zagreb, Croatia. All right, describe your career journey. I have one of those weird I can't say that word. Career journeys that makes no sense, but also makes a whole lot of sense. I studied music in college, but instead of becoming a famous opera singer, I went straight into a desk job after grad school, running the educational program for an opera company. Sounds like a very left turn from, like admin. Like, I don't know if that creative, like the creative side of that and the admin. I wonder what that was like for Kelly to kind of like reconcile those two. I went straight into a desk job. This was my first exposure to CRMs and organizational stuff, and where I first started thinking about design. At the same time, I was teaching music courses, and okay, so you didn't kind of have both here. I was teaching music courses and voice lessons at a university near Nashville, where I lived, and occasionally performing in local productions. After a few years, I moved to New York City, where I officially gave up singing and found a new purpose at a tiny arts nonprofit that served teenagers. Yes, definitely very, very varied steps here. My goal was to take an organization that did really impactful work and implement the infrastructure that would allow it to grow. I started as a volunteer, building their first CRM and working over the following decades, served as a program manager and then an operations director. In that time, I created tons of systems, wrote grants, schmoozed with other donors. Okay, so this is probably where Kelly got the idea for Wrote, for the grant writing, because it probably was such a pain in the ass that she was like, damn, this should be easier. Schmoozed with donors, trained a bunch of interns, produced over 20 original off-Broadway musicals, and learned the basics of WordPress, Salesforce, graphic design. It was a big job, and I learned a ton. In 2016, I left that job to travel full-time, even though I had tons of experience in systems. I didn't realize that I was somebody that could do something that I could do remotely. So I focused on web design and started scrounging for freelance clients. I took a ton of little online courses on branding, responsive web design, and WordPress, and eventually Webflow. While I never felt like this was really my thing, I was able to eke a living and keep traveling. How did you discover no code? I don't know anything about building software or product design, but I knew it was my future. A couple of weeks later, I emailed all of my clients and told them I was quitting design and becoming a Bubble developer. Over Christmas 2020, I discovered Notion. I had really been missing systems work, so I dove into with a hilarious amount of gusto, organizing my personal notes and freelance records, and just playing around with it in a bunch of ways. Barely left my apartment that week. For a number of years, I had an idea for a system to organize grant proposal language, and I built a little prototype in Notion and pitched it to a bunch of grant writers that I found on LinkedIn. They liked the idea, but Notion was just too easy to mess up, and it didn't allow for multi-tenant setup without revealing user data. I kept playing around with it, eventually moving to Coda, which was much more powerful but had the same issues. That was right around the 2020 U.S. presidential election, so I was glued to Twitter along with all that madness. I started following some Notion and Coda folks, and that was how I discovered the no-code community. Of course, I quickly got wind of Bubble as the OG, big deal, be-all, end-all tool, but I just kept hearing how hard it was, so I ignored it for a few months. But then on a whim one weekend, I signed up for the account, and within about 10 minutes, I realized I found a tool that could handle all the problems I've been struggling with in Coda and Notion. I also realized that this tool allowed me to use all the skills I'd collected throughout my career. I didn't know anything about building software product design, but I knew it was my future. A couple weeks later, emailed all my clients and told them I was quitting design and become a Bubble developer. Damn, Kelly, she goes all in. Kelly is all in. I love that. So again, kind of a common theme here around like the kind of the need first, right? Kelly kind of had a need to make grant writing easier. I guess she saw that as a problem when she was doing it herself, and then cycled through the tools that are on the, I would say, easy to learn end of the spectrum, but you hit development limits with them pretty quickly, especially if you're building out some kind of software that's not just for you, it's for other people, and you want to open that up and have a proper database structure and all that, and then which gave her the motivation to then learn Bubble. And Bubble and Kelly is was a Bubble bootcamp instructor. Her and I did the boot camps together. Not together, but at the same time. And that was 2020. And I think she started, it was like a year after that or something like that. So that's how I met Kelly, actually, through the boot camps. Describe how no code has changed your career trajectory. The opportunities I've had since I found Bubble are head spinning. I work with the coolest people and I'm building the coolest stuff, and I don't have to freak out about money anymore. As a designer, I had no formal training, no community, very little confidence or understanding of how my skills measured up. My clients were mostly nonprofits, which limited what I could charge, among other challenges. And because it was traveling, networking was really difficult. So I always struggled. When I found Bubble, all that changed almost overnight. I wasn't immediately making money, but I did immediately have a community and awareness that my skills were really valuable in this space. Very true. Very true. To bring some design skills to the no-code Bubble space. We need more designers. The opportunities I've had since I found Bubble are head spinning. I work with I read this part already. Given how young the no-code space is, it really does feel like I'm just at the beginning of a seriously cool career I would have never imagined. What were the biggest challenges to learning no-code and making the career change? I'm constantly reminding myself that no one knows everything. The product is evolving, and we're all learning as we go. Damn, that is hard. That is hard to remember. That is hard to remember when you're doing this. It's hard to remember that because I get like so stressed out when I can't figure something out, and I've just been stuck in a dev hole for like a few days or a week. and I'll just like beat myself up about it. But it's hard to remember in those moments that it's like it's not me all the time. It's like there's a reason that I'm stuck, and there is a reason. Like everyone, there's no right answer to this. Like I have to figure the answer out, and it's it's like it's it's just it's hard to remember that it's not always a test of your skill. It's like a test of your own patience and like like not to beat yourself up when you don't know something, or you're seemingly at a development wall that is insurmountable. In the beginning, working in tech was extremely intimidating. I really struggled to show up to these spaces without giving a disclaimer that I'm a big old noob, and I still feel that occasionally, but I do understand now. Most people that's most people in this world. That's most people, like, yeah, in that are using Bubble at all. We're all kind of noobs, right? Like we've just been at it longer than others, maybe, but it's still pretty new, no matter how long you've been doing it. While usually very smart and talented, are just making it up as they go along. Yeah, very true. The biggest challenge for me at this point is owning the limits of my current skill set. I can hold my own with the core Bubble stuff, but I'm not the girl you want to call to when you want to set up some crazy API setup. Not true, because I know for a fact that you set up that OpenAI API, which is, like the pinnacle of complexity, maybe not from the API side, but that's like the cutting edge technology that we're all working with now. So think we can go back on this one here. I do want to learn about all of those things, and I know I eventually will, but for the time being, I've had to get comfortable saying I'm probably not the right person for XYZ project. I say that all the time. Not usually for a technical reason, but more for like if the person just doesn't seem open to the way that I work, and we may not get along that well, and I'm not going to be able to deliver what they expect, that's usually when I'm like, I'm not the right person for this project. I can't build your fully functional MVP in 7 days. It's just not going to happen. The problem is that no code doesn't have any really defined roles in the way that traditional software development does. You're sort of expected to be able to do it all. Yeah, very true. So I'm constantly reminding myself that no one knows everything. The product's evolving as we're all learning as we go. Yeah, that's an interesting area to discuss, like how these roles will develop, right? You have in programming, you have backend people who just specialize in backend. You have people who specialize in design, people that focus on integrations. And when you get as you evolve, you probably pick up a little bit of everything, but you're probably most comfortable in one area. That has not happened in Bubble or no code. Like everyone is just expected to know everything, and expected by who, you might ask. Like who is expecting this? Kind of us, like ourselves. We're expecting, because you want to build a fully functional app. You want to build something that from end to end works, and you need all of those disciplines in order to do that. You need a back end, right? So yeah, it's like it's the pressure we put on ourselves more than anything else. And what we promise people, I guess, also goes into like, yeah, well, if I say I'm going to build this app for you, I have to have an understanding of, at least a basic understanding of, all of the back end, front end integration stuff. What are your biggest lessons learned? The single biggest life nugget I've taken, it's an interesting way to say it, life nugget, I've taken from this whole experience is to make space to get lost in things you're excited about, even if you can't see how they'll contribute to your immediate goals. When I found Notion a couple of years ago, I was headed in a completely different direction that I did not know would suit me at all. I remember thinking that spending hours playing around in Notion was irresponsible because it was distracting me from these very practical goals that I set for myself. But following that instinct is the only reason I have the career that I have now. Yeah, I feel the same way. Plan for the next 5 years. Things have moved so fast over the past year. I can't imagine what I'll be doing in 6 months from now, much less 5 years. I expect I'll be building and designing in some way. I love talking, so maybe a little more of that. Come on the stream, Kelly, please. I'd love to have you. I honestly have no idea. For the first time, I'm totally fine with it. For the first time, I'm totally fine with it. What career advice would you give others hoping to change their careers in the way that you did. First of all, don't expect it to be easier to happen overnight. No code is deceptive in how easy it is to learn to get started. Thank you for saying that. Well, I would say it's easy to get started. It's hard to continue. It's hard to keep going, right? I think everyone seems to get excited in the first like few days that they're using Bubble and how easy it is to drag and drop elements on the page and like, oh yeah, this is fun. This isn't going to take long, right? And they think they're done once they have their user interface built. And then they realize, oh man, I got to build the logic behind all of this. And that's when it becomes not fun and it becomes difficult to keep going because there's of the effort involved. But like any knowledge professional, you need to work hard and learn with gusto. Is it gusto or gusto? I don't know. Second, join communities and make friends who can help you learn and who you can help in return. This is invaluable. Yeah, totally. Trading skills, I think, is a big benefit of being part of this community, right? If I know something in a certain area that someone else may not, we could just kind of like trade skills because chances are they know something that I'm not very good at. So trading those skills. And third, do an inventory of the skills you already have. Look around the space and see which of those skills could fill the gaps that people are talking about. For me, it was design. For you, it might be strategy or project management or knowledgeable of the particular industry. Figure out what makes you uniquely valuable and then exploit the hell out of it. Follow Kelly on Twitter. All right, so that's Kelly's story. Drop that in the chat. All right, and then we got one more here. We've got Chad. How a founder saved $8K a month. How a founder saved $8K a month by rebuilding a coded app with no code. Chad Sakonchik has over a decade of experience as an entrepreneur. He was accustomed to spending tens of thousands of dollars getting his apps built by freelance developers and discovered Bubble and realized he could build his apps himself from the ground up. All right, Chad. 41 years old, native to Austin, Texas. Started as a solopreneur in my mid-20s where I hired my first coder off of rentacoder.com. What is Rent-A-Coder? That does not sound like a reputable site. I don't want to rent a coder. That sounds terrible. I was living at home with my parents during the day. I installed and maintained septic systems for my dad's friend's business while I moonlit communicating with my overseas developer at night. I used to sleep on the futon in the attic loft and crank the speakers to full blast and fall asleep until my dev would come online and chat with me on AOL Instant Messenger. Wow, going back. Bringing it back to AIM. Wow. My first product was a mild bust, but I learned a lot and continued to hire developers for side projects. Even as I went into the corporate world, I launched a handful of Facebook apps, web apps, iPhone app. I think I was more enthralled with the next thing than focusing on marketing, or maybe spent a lot of time on the MVP before realizing the product didn't have any road beneath it. I spent a lot of money over a decade on side projects that went nowhere. I even learned to code in Ruby and spent months custom coding a food truck ordering system that printed an order and paid the vendor. This was designed for food trucks. The custom code experience confirmed that coding required was too much time while also having to run the other aspects of the business. How did you discover no code? Due to the nature of the corporate job I held in 2007, I was exposed to early Salesforce.com, which is arguably the first true no code tool that allowed someone to build their own system. I believe I was playing with the various interpretations of no code like WordPress and Webflow, but nothing ever really fit. I wasn't until Build Sell 30 where I built out an MVP of TradeBeacons.com on Bubble that I found a tool that I truly believed scratch a decade-long itch. That's when I decided to rebuild my primary business, Better Legal's entire system in Bubble. Check it out. Trade Beacons. Cool. Looks pretty profesh. Can't tell this is built on Bubble. And I think people say that a lot too. Like, oh, I can't tell it's built on Bubble. And I think that all that really means to me is that like you've changed the styling enough that it's not the default styles that Bubble gives you. right? I think that's it. I think that's all it is. It's not about like you can build any design on Bubble. Like I've seen the very beautiful designs from talented people. But if you're leaving the default styles that they give you, it's going to look like other Bubble apps because that's what a lot of people do. So I think that's part of the reason why Bubble gets a bad rap for design. It's not that you can't do it there. It's just that people are leaving the default styling and reusing that and not changing it enough, which is why some of them tend to look alike. This you can see is very, very professional looking software here. All right, describe how no code has changed your business. We're not fully done. We're running the old coded system in parallel with Bubble systems until we're sure everything works properly in the new system and remove reliance on certain things the old system provides. But our team is now working fully within the Bubble rebuild of Better Legal. I've been able to remove tools like Asana, Typeform, FormStack from our stack and build something more custom in-house. Well, I still have devs building the majority of the functionality. The speed at which we're able to launch new features, replace third-party legacy SaaS subscriptions is unreal. As soon as we removed our legacy front-end devs, we realized there were savings of $8,000 per month from overhead while having visibility into what is being built, since I can log in to see the work myself versus being locked into a black box with custom code. What were the biggest challenges? To learn no-code and applying it to your business? I'd say that the biggest challenge was not having the modern-day no-code tools available when I was in my 20s. Having to wait for the technology to catch up with my desire to build products myself has been difficult, but I've been able to take my years of experience with limitations of custom code and fold it into my no-code builds. Plan for the next 5 years. Build all the tools I've been wanting to build over the past decade. I love productivity tools to make teams more efficient. I built out a lot of tools for the team at Better Legal and now can take my real-world experience with feedback to create better tools for the masses with no code. So this is coming from the legal side, right? 4 different industries we've talked about today. What are your predictions for how no code will affect the future world of startups and small business in the future? I think existing businesses have expensive developers, and a lot of people overhead are going to have a rude awakening in the next 20 years. The reason VCs pump money into startups like Airbnb and Uber is because it requires a lot of devs to build a system like that. Now we're close to a small handful of people being able to recreate these systems with modern no-code tools. It begs the question of how legacy companies will compete with such smaller and nimbler teams. Great point. What advice would you give to others hoping to apply no-code to their business in the way that you are? Build for what your customers need now, not what you think they will need. Ooh, nice. People like me who love building are terrible predictors for what people will actually use, so only build what people have told you they'll use or have paid you to build. Yeah, fair. So a common theme here is like I think across the 4 profiles that we kind of took a look at today, I think that there is definitely the like kind of that either an itch or the need for to use these tools, and then as you dig a little bit deeper, you get into the like I'm interested in this and this is kind of fun to do, and I think I want to do this full time, right? And then you just like ingratiate yourself in the no code community, and then that just becomes your career path when I guess that starts to outweigh the interest in your previous career history. So mine was like I don't know, it's kind of different from these. I guess I was an HR consultant, and I had an HR related startup idea that I wanted to build, and I hired a team of developers to build it for me, and I couldn't use it because it was built in Ruby. So I couldn't change anything. I couldn't make any modifications. I didn't have any insight into how they were building it or what they were doing or where they were in the process. So basically, like I gave them my 1-page document. They said, "Okay, we can build this for 15,000." And then I didn't hear from them for like 4 months, and they gave it back to me, and I was like, "Oh, great, okay." Like so, it was a kind of a miserable experience for my part. I did learn a lot from that experience, but it was an expensive one. And if I could have done it differently, I did know about Bubble at the time, but I did like I think it was Kelly that pointed out I kind of put it off learning because I found it too difficult, right? And after that, I realized that like what's worse than the learning curve for something like Bubble is not having control over the project that you're building. So I went back to Bubble, and that kind of gave me the motivation that I needed to do to build my MVP and learn the fundamentals of Bubble. What would I have done differently? I think so. That's why I got into it, and it didn't even occur to me to freelance until way after. Like that idea didn't have any legs. Like I learned that the idea that I was building was a shit idea, and that nobody wanted it, or at least I wasn't positioning it correctly. So I kind of like just dropped it, and then I was working at I took a job because I had quit my job. I think what I would have done differently, to go back to that, what I would have done differently is not have quit my day job so quickly. Again, I kind of had to do that because that's just the way that I like, almost like the way that Kelly describes it. I just go all in, and I don't know how to not do that. But I put all my eggs in one basket to say, all right, I'm going to work on this HR startup idea, and not having an income is going to give me the motivation to work harder. That was a stupid fucking idea that I had. That was wrong. Wrong. That does not give you the motivation. Being like scared about how you're going to pay your rent does not give you the motivation to like do a good job on your startup idea. Like I understand the whole concept of like burning your boat, so you have like, like you have no way back. I've heard people talk about this before, but I don't think that's a very good strategy. It just kind of makes you anxious all the time because you're like, all right, I have to focus on this, has to be a success or I can't pay my rent. It's not a good mentality. So eventually I took a job at a restaurant, and I was bartending. And while I was there, I did that for about, this is right before COVID, right? So I'd already quit my job at that point. This was right before COVID, and I couldn't remember the drinks there were very complicated, so I couldn't remember the drink recipes. And I built an app for myself that had all of the drink recipes in there so that I could like, just type it up quick on my phone when they were ordered. Now, when I did that, a coworker, she saw me using it, and she was like, "Oh, can you share that with me?" So I did that, and she's like, "Well, if you can build stuff like this, why are you working here? Why don't you just build apps for other people?" And that's the light bulb moment that I had where it's like, "Oh, I could like freelance. I could like people would want to see this." Because again, this is 2020, right? Bubble certainly had a user base, but the freelancer, the idea I didn't see myself as like an app developer at that point. I was just like, all right, I had a startup idea, I tried it, I fucked it up, and whatever. Like the building part was pretty cool. I did enjoy that. The fact that I could build something at all was something that I'd never really, even considered. So like going back to that, but it never occurred to me to like sell a freelance service until that moment. That's what it was. And then I got my first client at a Bubble meetup where um, Marissa from Travel Trunk, she was looking for a Bubble developer, and she was my first person that paid me money to do Bubble work, and I will be forever grateful for that because it set me on a totally different path. Um, and that's it. I've been doing that ever since. Like that's how I got into it. I think yes, that certainly, to speak like why I stuck with this path. It wasn't just out of necessity. I almost couldn't see myself going back to my career in human resources after I figured out that I could do this and get paid for it. I couldn't see myself going back to a corporate environment after this. It just seems it was so different, and that feels like such a lifetime ago at this point. It's not even yeah, it seems like a different person almost. But where was I going? Um, but yeah, I mean, so I guess the title of this was, should I change to careers to build with no code? Um, the answer to that is very personal, of course, right? Like I wouldn't recommend anyone do what I did the way that I did it. It was too all in and unnecessarily stressful. But like you can see some of the other people that we took a look at today. They had a very like a real need, and then that turned into something that they could make money on, and they enjoyed what they were doing, and it just seems to happen naturally. Maybe there's more to it, of course. Maybe everyone simplifies their story a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think that if I could do it again, I probably would have just held on to my job for a little bit longer. But even saying that, like even saying that, would I have even found the way to freelancing and selling, would I have found myself doing that if I didn't have the need to earn money? I don't know. I don't know. So it's so hard to say. I guess there's really no way to know. But um, you know, I enjoy what I'm doing. I like solving these problems, and it makes me feel smart to do it. And I never really thought that I would be able to build any software that's useful to somebody else. So that's a cool feeling. It's a cool feeling also when you get someone to pay you money for the first time, that you just, like for something, pay you money, like that's not an employer, like someone will pay you money. Your skill is so valuable that they'll give you their money to do it. It's a pretty crazy feeling. It's pretty wild. Um, just didn't think that was possible if you grew up like me, who was just told, like, yeah, go to college, get good grades in school, go to college, get a job, and that's the way we live life, right? There was no other there was no other like options presented. It was just like, this is the path of life. Go to school, good grades, college, job. Um, and I did all that, right? I did that, but then left turned into this other thing, which again, I still don't know what to call it. I don't even know if this is a career. I'm just kind of like learning as I go, as Kelly points out, right? Everyone's just learning as you go. Um, and I'm going to see where it takes us. All right. So that's my story, and 4 other very interesting stories who have stumbled upon no code and made it their career. And yeah, we'll check in. I'll check in tomorrow. I'm probably going to stream earlier tomorrow. I might do like 8 a.m. Eastern time. I have to be somewhere later on in the day, but I'm going to check in tomorrow and we'll get something else going. All right. Thanks for joining. If you are watching, appreciate that. Check out the Rad stream every day, streaming every day, either 7 p.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern. All right. Catch you tomorrow.